in the few minutes that we have together today, I'm going to challenge what is, I believe, a commonly held misperception about this holiday. But before I do, a few words of thanks. I want to thank the Dunwoody Women's Club, my VFW Post 10822, and Mr. Wayne Radloff for sponsoring this event that really over time has become one of the cornerstone events of our community. It's grown year after year exponentially, and wonderful to see everybody here. I also, and I think even more importantly, want to thank all of you. Not just for being here, although it's a lot more fun to talk to a group of people than a bunch of empty seats. But I want to thank you for something that's significantly more profound. And if you'll indulge me just a minute or two, I'll explain what I mean. So the world today is a complex, a very dangerous place. We essentially have four major adversaries. Iran continues to develop weaponizable nuclear material, and that's not even in the news anymore. In the past 12 months, North Korea has launched more intercontinental ballistic missile tests than they did in the entire 5 years before that. That's barely in the news. Russia's been in the news a lot, and though they haven't exactly distinguished themselves in terms of military capability on the battlefield, they have absolutely distinguished themselves in terms of the savagery and the brutality that they're willing to visit upon the innocent citizens of a sovereign nation. And then there's China. China's in the news a lot. China continues to steadily, quietly amass the world's largest military, but importantly, they're continuing to expand their reach beyond their proper territorial limits. They're now pushing out toward what many of us know as the second island chain, with a stated intent, the stated intent of controlling the world without having to use their military. They intend to control the world economically, and they're well on their way to doing that. So as these four adversaries of ours plot their next steps and figure out what they're going to do next, they're constantly assessing the United States. And it's not hard to get online and figure out how many ships and planes and tanks and troops we have. That's easy to figure out. But there's one thing that our adversaries can't figure out. They can't quantify it. They can't ascertain the magnitude of it online. They can't because they don't have it. They don't understand it. They can't possibly believe that it stirs and drives a nation. What they don't understand is the will of the American people. So the will of the American people, as the rabbi alluded to, is seen and practiced every day in our communities through setting aside our differences, through working together, through the peaceful transition of power, through, and importantly, events like this today, where we set aside whatever differences we have, we come together and we demonstrate something, a power, a force, that every time our nation's sovereignty, every time our republic has been challenged in the 247 or so years we've been around, this is what's carried us to victory. And it's that demonstration that serves as a deterrent. In a day and age when our military is no longer the single military, we're no longer the single military superpower in the world, it's the will of the American people more than anything else that helps keep those aggressors at bay. And you, all of you, by being here today and by doing what you do when you leave here today, are an important part of that. So speaking as someone who would have to get involved if deterrence fails to work, I am profoundly grateful for your presence here today. So thank you. So I mentioned that I'm going to address what I believe personally is a commonly held misperception about this holiday. Let me pull that string a little bit for you. So I grew up in a smallish town in Virginia, and we recited the Pledge of Allegiance, we stood for the national anthem, and our teachers made sure we knew the meaning of every patriotic holiday. 4th of July, obviously celebrating independence, Veterans Day, celebrating those who served, Flag Day, celebrating the majesty of this beautiful swath of cloth behind me, and of course Memorial Day, celebrating those who'd fallen in service to their country. And I remember vividly in elementary school learning lessons of young men and women who had perished in defense of our freedoms. They were sobering lessons. And even at that young age, some of the people we studied were not that much older than me. But it was Memorial Day. We got a day off school. The snow had melted. School itself was going to be out for the summer in just a couple weeks. It was the day the city pool opened. And all you had to do was swing open your back door, and you get a nostril full of charcoal, ears full of laughter, and it was a joyous day. But every Memorial Day, at some point in the day, one of the adults, usually a parent, would say, well, you know, kids, just as the enjoyment of Memorial Day was about to reach crescendo, well, you know, kids, Memorial Day is about more than hot dogs and hamburgers and splashing around in the pool. Deflating. And so, like many of you, I suspect, for most of my young years, I labored under this duality. I labored under, it's Memorial Day. Oh, it's Memorial Day. Do I feel guilty? Do I feel happy? How do I feel? And I kind of just balanced that tenuous dichotomy into my early adult years, and really until about 1985, when as a young adult, I raised my hand for the first time and took my first oath coming into the military. And at that point, my view changed just a little bit. And it changed just a little bit because all of a sudden I was around a group of patriots who had all voluntarily joined the military service. And though I never met any of them who was looking forward to dying for his or her country, we all understood that that was potentially part of the deal. You're entering an inherently risky occupation. And I noticed that being around them, they didn't suffer quite as much from that anxiety or that duality that I had been dealing with, I think in part because they had all, almost by definition, made a personal decision that whatever they might have to give their lives for was worth giving their lives for. So my mindset started to change just a little bit. It really changed in early 2003. So you guys will undoubtedly remember that that on the heels of 9/11, we as a nation vowed that we were never again going to be attacked that way on our homeland. And as the post 9/11 kind of wave went through America, we became sensitive to the potential of bad actors having weapons of mass destruction. We believed that Iraq had weapons of mass destruction. The United Nations sent inspectors in. The inspectors were kicked out. We wanted to send the inspectors back in. Saddam Hussein said no. So we all knew in late 2002 that we were going to invade Iraq. And my Army Reserve unit, which contained a specialty, a technical specialty that didn't exist in the active Army, was told, you guys are going to join the 3rd Infantry Division and you're going to be part of the first wave into Iraq. And by the way, you should expect 50% casualties. So, now that's not as bad as it sounds, actually, because if you've been a soldier, sailor, airman, Marine, and you're standing in a group of people and somebody says, 50% of you aren't going to make it, a typical soldier, sailor, airman, or Marine will say, I feel sorry for the guy next to me, because it's not going to be me. But it was sobering nonetheless. So as we made our preparations, I did all the things you'd expect. I disengaged from my civilian occupation. I said goodbye to my friends and my extended family. And in the last couple days before I left, I found myself at home alone. I think the girls were in school. My wife was out doing some things. So I grabbed a legal pad and I sat down in our breakfast nook and I wrote a letter. I took that letter, I folded it, I put it in an envelope, I put my wife's name on it, and I stuck it among my personal belongings that I was going to leave at home, knowing that if I didn't come back, she would find it and read it. It would be, in essence, my final message to my family. And it was as I wrote that letter, it was at that breakfast nook table that I had a personal epiphanal change in the way I viewed my service, my mortality, and by extension, Memorial Day. I think this is the first she's heard of that letter. She just confirmed, which is a good thing. I don't remember. It's 20 years ago. I know where the letter is. It's still sealed. I obviously haven't read it since then. And I don't remember everything I wrote, but I do remember very clearly what washed over me as I wrote it. And that was the basic sentiment that I hope you remember me. And while it's okay to mourn me briefly, what I really want you to do is live a joyous life. I want you to enjoy the freedoms that my sacrifice, just one installment in a payment that has been made since the dawn of this country by thousands and thousands of men and women. I want you to enjoy every day, every hour, every minute, the joy that my sacrifice has purchased. Okay to remember me, but please, please don't spend too much time mourning my loss. I would not presume to speak for those who can't speak for themselves. Certainly, I would not presume to speak for those who have fallen in service of their country. But I suspect that my view on that among men and women in uniform is not alone. And I would ask respectfully that as you go from this place, if you, for however long, have been laboring under that tension that I expressed a few minutes ago, the joy of Memorial Day, the sadness of mourning the loss, that you perhaps tweak just a little bit the way you view Memorial Day going forward. I would respectfully suggest that it's appropriate to remember those who have passed. But I would also respectfully suggest that the way we best honor their sacrifice, the way we best preserve their memory, is to do what Americans have already always done, which is demonstrate our collective American will. Come together. We have differences here that day in and day out seem monumental and seem horrible and insurmountable. They're not. They're not. We must set those apart. We must join together. We, you in particular, must do the thing that the military cannot, and that is by demonstrating this powerful, wonderful, indelible American will, deter aggression, and do things through deterrence that our military hopefully will not have to do through force. I appreciate the opportunity to be with you this morning and share a few thoughts. God bless you, and God bless this great nation.